Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Giordano. Today I'm interviewing British explorer and filmmaker Reza Pakravan, who has a long and impressive expedition CV that includes crossing the Sahara by bike in record time, traveling the length of the Sahel region of Africa, and attempting to set the world record for fastest bicycle journey from the Arctic Circle to Cape Town, South Africa. In this episode, Reza and I touch on why he left a bougie career in finance to attend film school and how Tintin was a major childhood influence. We also talk about the challenges of crossing some of the world's most dangerous borders south of the Sahara Desert and what he recently discovered during filming of his latest multi-part series called Hidden Frontiers Arabia. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy. Well, Reza, thank you so much for joining me on the Overland Journal podcast. We're going international today. I'm in Madrid, Spain, so if you hear any traffic noise, I apologize in advance. And you're actually in London, so thanks for joining me.
Of course, I'm in my garden shed, so apology for the background noise, which is rain.
Typical of London at this time of year. I see a bike in the background, so I'm excited to chat a little bit about that as well.
It's my little adventure dungeon, if you like.
Sweet. I love it. So you have done a lot of stuff. Like, you're quite the established explorer and adventurist and have done quite a few trips, like epic trips on bikes and filmed series. Maybe just give me if you were going to walk into an elevator, give me your elevator pitch. Like, who are you? I know that's an in-depth question, but yeah, maybe just a little intro to the Overland Journal audience. That'd be great.
I always say, when I introduce myself, I always say, well, what's your job title? I said, well, depends who you're asking. If you ask my mom, she thinks I'm unemployed. But I'm an explorer and filmmaker. How these two intertwine, it's a very simple thing. I make films about exploration and grand journeys, which has taken me to some of the far-flung corner of the planet, whether behind a camera or in front of a camera. So at the beginning of my career, I started doing very long distance endurance journeys. And then as my career started to evolve, I became more interested in documenting adventure and exploration with impact. So it always has been a purpose-driven adventure, something that adds a knowledge, using my adventures and exploration as a tool to add a knowledge that otherwise the world doesn't know anything about it. Whether exploring an unexplored canyon in search of our ancient past, or entering a sort of a tribal zone and shedding light on the problems that those tribes are facing. Whatever I do has a very specific purpose.
And a special thanks to Kuat Racks for their support of this week's podcast. Their new Ibex has landed. It's actually overlanded. This groundbreaking bed rack is effortlessly handling substantial loads both on and off the grid. Constructed from lightweight yet durable aluminum, it boasts a ballistic black powder coat made for all the nature you can throw at it. It's available in 6 different frame sizes to accommodate most truck models, and it's equipped with telescoping crossbars, numerous T-channels, and a versatile full and half height configuration right out of the box. This is the Ibex from Kuat. It is engineered for adventure. For more details, please visit kuat.com. Kuat, because you will absolutely love this bed rack.
Gotcha. So you're looking at these stories that are under the radar and maybe haven't been told as in depth as you would like them to be. Or
as an explorer, I always say explorers are storytellers. They create stories that changes our understanding about the world that we live in. Whether you're exploring the Arctic, working with a bunch of scientists trying to solve the climate issues, or whether you are looking at it from an anthropological point of view, or traveling to the places that no one has ever traveled, to just bring back those stories and share with the rest of the world. That's effectively your job title.
Nice. That's great. One thing I wanted to ask you is where you get these ideas from.
Right, definitely they're not ideas that I wake up in the middle of the night and I think, oh, I have to go to Papua New Guinea tomorrow. It's not like that. Normally I get obsessed with an idea or a region of the world, and a mystery is something that we don't know much about it. And I start researching. A huge amount of research and development goes through every single travel and films that I'm making. So huge amount of knowledge acquisition takes place at the beginning, whether through contacts, internet. I'm part of a Royal Geographical Society, Explorers Club, a Scientific Exploration Society. All of these people have a big network of individuals, very well traveled people with a very established international footprint. So if you like, the first 4 or 5 months of my sort of a digging is just basically knowledge acquisition as much as I can, and then refine that to an idea that I would like to present from that region of the world, this mystery that I want to solve.
What kinds of information do you get from the societies and the clubs? Is it documentation or talking to other people that are part of the societies and the clubs, or what does that usually look like for you?
Yeah, a bit of a both. For example, if I'm and also filmmaker, so if I'm about to venture into let's say Sahelian belt in North Africa, I would go and find people who have extensive knowledge about that place. The paper has been published on that part of the world, the films been made about that part of the world, the journalists have traveled there, talking to lots of NGOs who have penetrated that region, can provide me with first-hand information, because majority of regions that I'm really working on, they're really, really remote. So it requires very specialist knowledge, very they are mostly very difficult to access. So they're not stuff that you can find online. They are requires a fair amount of digging.
Nice. I love that. I love research. So yeah, you're really speaking my language here. Sounds like
Pretty cool,
fun.
isn't it?
Yeah. So in terms of like you haven't always been an explorer adventurist. So I've heard. Yeah. So you came from a finance background, but before that, I'm curious. As a child, did you love or growing up, did you love doing research? Did you love reading about places that were under the radar? Did this stem from childhood, or was this something that came later?
Sure. I was born in Iran, and when I was growing up during the the beginning of my sort of childhood, I remember just war and revolution, all that kind of stuff. So the country was quite close to the rest of the world. So all we had available to us, my window to the outside world, was Tintin, like a series of Tintin book. I'm not sure if you remember Tintin.
Yeah.
Yeah, book, the illustration book written by Hergé, a French, the Belgian writer. So I was reading Tintin inside out. I knew every page of various Tintin. I was my window to the outside world. My mom and dad both worked in television for so many years, and at the beginning of my career, I was traveling with my dad a lot, internationally, domestically, so many different places, because he was making documentaries. And whenever it was possible, he could sort of take me with him. I picked up the camera when I was 10. So by age of 15, I knew how to edit. And those days was not digital. It was all actually 16 millimeters film, 35 millimeters film. I could actually change, film cans inside the sort of a black bags and all that kind of stuff, which no one remembers those sort of stuff. Anyway, I got to the age of 16, 17. I think those days we were, I turned around, told my dad, I've seen your life, that all your life you worked really hard. My mom, they worked really hard in television for not much money. And I said, I know better. I would go and study finance. I'll go to London. I'll study finance, and I'm gonna make bucket loads of money. I prove you wrong. my dad laughed at me. And
Was he still,
he
sorry, was he still in, were you guys still in Iran at the time, or were you somewhere else where he was doing his
Yeah, we were
film?
in States actually those days.
Oh,
So yeah, and I said I'm going to go and study finance. So I came to London and studied finance. And just backtrack a little bit. My childhood has always been like lived in the edge of the mountain. So my childhood's always been outdoors, skiing, mountain climbing and trekking and all that kind of stuff. That's what you do when you live in the mountains. So when I came to London and sort of recycled myself into the world of finance, it was a bit of a shock to the system, um, and then entered this very sort of strange world of finance, which was completely different to every fabric of my being, but at the beginning was very attractive. Money was great, money was coming in. All of a sudden, in 2 years' time, I paid all my student loans. Those days were glorious days of finance, money, girls, cars, all that kind of stuff, excitement. And all of a sudden, I could afford everything that I wanted. A single guy in your mid-20s in London working in finance, what's not to like? Well, fast forward, a few years later, I was an overweight sort of a chopster sitting in a corporate office, completely depressed and resorting to shitloads of alcohol, if you like, which is the part and parcel of working in finance. That's the only thing actually makes life bearable. And then one day I was walking over London Bridge and I just told myself, this is not the life that I want to live. And there was through the sort of it took me about 3 years to be able to transform my life to do something that I really wanted to do. It wasn't a plain sailing. It was very, very difficult. For I from here, 6-figure salary with all those corporate perks and stuff like that. Lovely apartment in a best part of town. All of a sudden, I became homeless. I spent all my savings on going to film school and learn a craft from scratch. And I spent about good part of 18 months couch surfing in people's sofas. And then once I got depleted from every single penny I had and got myself into a certain amount of debt, finally the result of all the effort that I put through started coming back to me.
So where did you go to film school?
San Francisco.
San Francisco. Okay, so you went back to the US for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we often see these success stories or we look at other people's lives and think it just happens overnight. But a lot of the things that have led up to this moment involve a lot of time and a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hardship. And maybe people see you on the Discovery Channel and they're like, ooh, that guy, maybe he got here overnight, but it's usually way more in-depth story than that takes a lot of time. And so
it's a proper grind. You have to dig really deep, especially in such a competitive TV landscape, as well as this sort of lifestyle is pretty cool. I mean, people don't see the side that I'm sitting behind my desk for a long time, coming up with this plan and doing all this research, and probably 20 to 30% of the my part of my job is in the field. But it's not just being in the field; it's basically be able to sustain that disseminating those information to the wider public.
For sure. Yep. And then crafting the narrative or the story around getting those points out in a specific time period to hold people's attention while they're watching the show, I imagine. But yeah.
Absolutely true. Yeah. There's a lot of, it's a group of people editing, a lot of post-production, writing goes into it, which is absolutely great. I mean, I'm loving it because you relive those moments.
And a special thanks to O3 Outdoors for their support of this week's podcast. The world is messy. That's the price every outdoorsman pays for adventure. So when we need to keep things fresh, well, we at O3 Outdoors don't do things halfway.
We turn to the same technology NASA used to clean the space station, and we bring it down to our own frontier. You know, the smells, sweat, smoke, and fuel, the smells of a proper adventure, the stuff a true outdoorsman knows firsthand. Our technology here at O3 Outdoors eliminates bacteria and odors on gear or in your home and in your vehicles. Our Trekker bags allow you to pack, store, and carry your gear, cleaning it the entire time. Our portable Overlander units fit in any vehicle, home, or RV. It's the highest tech brought to the outdoor experience. Keep your gear fresh from one frontier to another. Thanks, O3 Outdoors.
For sure, for sure. That's the fun part. Yeah, you're like, I forgot about that part. Yeah,
Do
cool.
that.
Nice. So you finished up film school, and then what happened next? I'm curious if you went and started expeditioning right away, and did you film the trip, one of the first trips that you did or not, or how did that work out?
So when I was still in finance, before I actually resigned, so I imagine you're sort of institutionalized, you're quite an overweight, um, office worker with not much confidence about the stuff that you want to do. So you have to start from scratch. And I thought, okay, I'm going to start little. And I thought, okay, what skill that I have that I can sort of actually offer, um, to all of a sudden become, doing grand adventures. I'm not an Arctic explorer. I don't have any genetic, amazing genetic makeup, or, I'm not the strongest and fastest and toughest. So I looked around the house. I used to do a lot of mountain biking. So, there's a bike. I can do that. Maybe I can. There's something in there for me. So I started doing incrementally, let's say a day ride, then change to a sort of a weekend ride, and then you combine it with a camping, you get make a weekend out of it. And I started developing my skills of like wild camping and a bit of outdoor stuff. And then I started claw back all the things that I had from childhood. It was all there, and little by little I um, picked up the camera again. I become friendly with the camera again, and I realized, oh, this device that used to be this big now is this tiny, and you can shoot digital and all that kind of stuff. So, and I decided, got to the stage that I had a confidence to, set off on a big expedition. So I decided to cross the Sahara Desert on a bicycle. I applied to the Guinness World Record. They set up a criteria and gave me a time limit and criteria to do that. So I went and did that journey, and that changed my life completely. All of a sudden, when I came back, and I remember the moment that I actually put my keyhole and opened the door, and something just hit my forehead. What's next? And that was the time that I got the disease. I mean, I'm sure you've been there. You've been traveling, and that's something really gets you. And I thought, oh God, this is so good. I want to have more of it. So then I started bigger journey. So when I went to film school, and then I did a bigger journey, which I crossed the length of the planet from north to south. By then I resigned my job. I was training for 2 years. Then I sort of took my bike to the northernmost point in Europe and cycled in Norway. And I cycled all the way to Cape Town in record time of 102 days.
Wow. So Nordcap, was that Nordcap?
Yeah, to Cape Town.
Wow. That's intense. That's
yeah,
amazing.
It was really intense. It was really intense. I got malaria along the way, food poisoning, and it was a race against time to just get yourself to Cape Town on time. It was an eternal state of torture. But, what, and I was filming the journey and mobilized a group of people who joined me here and there to film the journey. And whatever I learned in film school, I put to practice. I teamed up with a bunch of people. We created this independent television series, and we managed to find distribution and sold it. I mean, obviously, before the movie was sold, the series was sold, I had to endure a huge amount of sort of financial hardship. So that the being homeless was sort of, it was part of that sort of 18 months gap waiting. And then I got a book deal. So this book was sort of a published Cap to Cape by Summersdale, which is the UK publisher. And all of a sudden, life changed, and I started doing more and more and more, and also getting employed to go and film other people's journey and expeditions for like mainstream channels.
Nice. So the title of that is CAP, K-A-P-P, to Cape.
Cap to Cape, yeah.
The listeners
so
who are interested. Awesome. I can't wait to read it. I've added it to my Goodreads list. I'm very excited.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, so you did Cap to Cape, you got your book deal, get your series out, and then some more additional interest happened after
Yeah,
that.
I got more interest. Did another journey across the Amazon, documenting the environmental crime across the Amazon perpetrated, and their impact on indigenous people. So I spend a lot of time with people with least amount of contact with the outside world, how their life came to danger by sort of outside forces, whether there are cattle ranchers, gold miners, environmental destruction, and so on. So I spent a huge amount of time in the Amazon, about 3 months, where I documented all of these, and I had a pleasure to travel to the edge of the territory of uncontacted tribes, and see things very few in the world have ever seen. I met people who have not had any contact with the outside world, which actually blew my mind. And then that continued. I did another series for Amazon Studios called The World's Most Dangerous Borders. And another one which is the Hidden Frontiers for Discovery Channel. So these are the ones that actually are being in front of a camera.
Right. I wanted to ask you about the Amazon trip. Just one question about what you learned from the tribes that had never been in contact with, I guess, the outside world or people from the outside.
It was a very interesting experience because when you see people who don't understand the value of money, the monetary world that we understand for them is not comprehensible. They have came to contact with outside world because they were in their jungle. All of a sudden, they saw that logger or poacher. They're actually using axes and machete and that kind of stuff, modern goods. They saw a guy, rather than putting his hand in the water and just like drinking water like this, all of a sudden you have this device which is called glass. They can put it in the water in the river and take your time and drink it. For them, all of a sudden they see these material goods and they want it, so they come to outside world. They want to contact with outside world, thinking they can have those goods. Whereas the problem is they don't have any skills to offer the outside world to acquire those. The exchange doesn't happen, so they enter this emotional anxiety. In a lower scale, just think about it. If you live in a tiny little village all your life, and then they transfer you right in the middle of New York City, how do you feel? All of a sudden you go, wow, what is this? You feel very overwhelmed. For them, that's like 100 times more. They never seen electricity. They never seen modern goods. So on that basis, they enter this emotional anxiety, and there is no mechanism for these people to feel better about their lives. So no one knows how to deal with them.
Yeah, it's like the movie Elf.
Exactly.
In another world, right?
In other words,
and then the skills that you have from your own life in that specific region are so specialized to your everyday life that, how does it transfer? Other than, I guess, educating others on what your life is like and what your practices are and your traditions and things like that. But I can't imagine coming out to New York City after being in a really, really, really remote place in the midst
I
of
mean, I was in deep in the Amazon for we're talking about the primary forest. I mean, by then when I got there, I was there for about 3 months, and I spent another 6 weeks in a primary forest studying these people, which are pretty much hunter gatherers. They move through the jungle without leaving any trace. Um, I came, expedition finished. I arrived in Lima, in Peru, and then my wife came there and said, "Oh, let's go to Machu Picchu." Yeah, let's go to Machu Picchu. To Machu Picchu, and it was the biggest shock to the system. I really did not enjoy Machu Picchu. Uh,
yeah,
all of a sudden, I saw like millions of tourists just pouring down into to Machu Picchu, and with their cameras and stuff like that. It was a complete shock. In any normal circumstance, I would probably enjoy it, but then I was in a completely different mindset.
yeah, that's fair. Even in getting in line for your ticket, I remember just being crushed in, like so many people just everywhere, and yeah, I honestly, yeah, it's an
It takes
experience,
away that beauty, doesn't it?
100%. Yeah, yeah, it does. I wanted to skip ahead a little bit and talk about world's most dangerous borders, and which regions you were in for that series as well, where you were filming.
So, if you tell people Sahel, probably 9 out of 10, they have no idea where it is. But it's a narrow belt that connects West Africa to East Africa, and is sandwiched between Sahara Desert and African savanna. Um, this is a transitional belt. Starts from Senegal, goes all the way to Somalia, and this is a transitional belt between a complete arid North Sahara with quite a fertile African savanna or African jungle, um, and because of the is not a is not a completely dry land. It's basically is a transitional area where the uh, if you like, it's a separation between nomadic life and the settlements. So in African sort of a savanna, there are lots of settlements, whereas in Sahara is all nomadic life,
Right.
Bedouins and Tuaregs and all that kind of stuff. So my journey, the title of the series was "The World's Most Dangerous Borders," and it was about why these borders are the most dangerous. Why the Sahelian belt in North Africa is the most dangerous place in the world, and especially within those border areas.
Mm,
So I started my journey in. I mean, I went for two recce's before actually starting the journey. I went to first time I went to Chad, and what I've seen literally blew my mind, which I come to it. But I traveled to by then I traveled to about 80 countries around the world, but I've never seen a place like Chad or Niger. These are like poorest countries in the world by far margin, and not only poor, they have not been developed in many shapes and form. So, um, and especially there are regions that when you're traveling there, you feel like you've gone back by 100 years. Um, so I started my journey in Senegal, and Senegal is quite a sort of a stable country, and I sort of made my way um, to Mali. Now, it's such a spectacular, incredibly cultural rich beating heart of Africa, beating heart of West Africa. It's really cultural hub of Africa in terms of music, arts, whatever you can possibly imagine. But the country is in trouble, same as the rest of the Sahelian region. And there's only one reason to it, because the Sahelian belt is getting is shrinking on a daily basis. The desertification, the global warming led to the mass desertification and pushing the desert further down. So the Sahelian belt is shrinking. So a lot of communities in the further north finding themselves their resources are dwindling, and they have to migrate to the south, further south. And
mm,
those guys in the south of the Sahelian belt, they have minimum amount of resources, and they have to all of a sudden share it with these people coming from the north. And that's why there's a climate war, there's devastation, there is poverty, and um, And yeah, all these sort of border wars is a part and parcel of those.
Gotcha. So it's interesting because I feel like we always hear about migration north,
Yeah,
but you're saying that there's also a migration south. Yeah, really
that's right.
interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you during that um, time period, overlanders love to talk about border crossings. So I wanted to talk to you a little
Mm.
bit about the logistics involved in that project, crossing the world's most dangerous borders for the series and filming and all of that.
Um,
You
I
laugh.
have one word to describe it, and that's it's nightmare.
Okay.
The biggest nightmare. I have to say, between all those border crossings, it was just one of them was an easy one, and was Senegal to Mali. The rest was the most painful border crossings ever. To the level that that the worst one was crossing to Sudan from Chad. That led us to spend 4 days in jail.
Oh.
So I think that's by far the gnarliest border crossing ever.
Was that
Um,
your whole team in jail? Like they was
sorry.
this was it your whole team that was in jail
Yeah, we were all in jail for
filming
four
or
days. Yeah, we were held by Sudanese intelligence services, and we were so basically we were in Chad, which is itself is a completely different story. But we wanted to get to Sudan. We were in such remote places before we get to Sudan that we actually didn't know what was going on in the world. While we were try to film this incredibly beautiful tribe in the middle of nowhere in Sudan, a revolution was happening. So by the time we got to the Sudanese border, the government has already been toppled. The army took over, and the border that we wanted to cross is called Chadian Sudanese border. It's basically the Sudanese side is Darfur, which is a very politically sensitive place. Not a single camera crew over the last 20 years has been able to pass through, and we had a special permission.
whoa.
So as we got there, we didn't know what was happening. It was extremely sensitive. We crossed the border. We were taken to to a barracks, and so what are you guys doing here? Well, we're meeting these tribes. You had an arrangement. Well, there's no arrangement. There's no government. So yeah, hello. Let's go to the barracks, and then we were handed over to the Sudanese intelligence, and then next thing we know, we were in jail for 4 days before we kicked out of Darfur and sent to Khartoum, the capital, for further questioning, and then kicked out of the
Whoa.
country.
What was the jail experience like?
Oh, where? Which part of it you want to know? It was. They were really respectful. I mean, Sudanese were really nice people. The only problem was the sanitary problem. It was the toilets were disgusting. It was so bad, and it was very close to us. So the smell was so overpowering that we could not sleep. It was like 4 days of torture. I mean, the worst part of it was the smell of that toilet. And I've been to a few really, really bad places with like lack of hygiene and bad toilets and stuff like that. But this was whole new level.
It's like
So
torture by toilet.
sorry,
It's like torture by toilet.
yeah, my that's a very good way to put it. My cameraman got salmonella, and he was vomiting, and it was really, really bad experience. So last day, once they put us in a United Nations flights and tried to get rid of us and send us to the capital, we were so happy and relieved.
I bet that made any sort of any toilet at that point probably seemed great.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And during
Wow.
that time, which was I was in custody, my wife was pregnant back home, so she didn't hear from me for 4 days. So she
Oh
was.
my goodness. Oh my goodness. Wow. Oh wow. Woof! And you're here to tell the tale.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
That was a hell of a border crossing, I have to say.
Yeah. So were you guys traveling in a vehicle, or were you walking over the land borders? Like, did you have to do a temporary import permit? Everybody's passports got checked. Like, what did that look like? How many hours did they take? Were you
Yeah,
different?
so basically you start with one, you stop in one country and you enter another country. So you enter, let's say you stop at the border of Chad. Then from the Sudanese side, your fixers and your guides will come and take you. They receive you from that side. Once you clear the custom, um, they come and take you with their vehicles.
Okay, so yeah, that makes sense that you'd have a fixer for those
You have
situations.
to,
Yeah,
otherwise you won't be able to get permits, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I
for
mean, it
sure.
was one of the downside of my job is, unfortunately, these days I cannot just, okay, let's pack the bag, look at the get the visas, and um, look at the map and just go there. It's a huge amount of risk assessment. It's lots of red tape. You got the costs and justify to the network that you're going to come back alive in one piece.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that, because your most recent one that I know of, unless you have some other thing that hasn't been launched yet, but the Hidden Frontiers in Arabia is the most recent project, right? So tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about the logistics that were involved in that, and a crew and gear and getting permits and that whole thing. I guess yeah, the Coles notes or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again took us about a year to put this together, and there are not many places in the world left that you can say, "Oh, this place is really unexplored," or people know about everywhere. Unfortunately, Saudi Arabia just opened its door after hundreds of years of being closed to the rest of the world, and so we were one of the pioneers in there. And there are so many places in Saudi Arabia that left unexplored, like lava fields or a canyon or deserts that people have not been, or caves. And through few recce's and a lot of studies, we just realized, okay, there's an unexplored canyon here. There are a few mysteries to really unlock. For example, in Iraqi Kurdistan, there's this endangered species that thrives within minefields, which is like Persian leopards, which only 20 of them left in Kurdistan. Mm, um, they live within minefields. So for us was putting these stories together and to really unlock those mysteries. um, so these are very politically sensitive countries, and normally they don't, camera crews that, I mean, I do mainly mainstream entertainment. I don't do anything of sort of politics or current affairs and that kind of stuff. So we create a sort of adventure television. um, and when we approached those countries to get permits, was incredibly difficult to get film permit, because all of them thinking that, oh, we want to report on human rights, we want to report on sort of women's issues and that kind of stuff, mistreatment of women. And that wasn't the purpose of the show. The
I'm
purpose
surprised to
was,
hear that, because Saudi, opening up an F1, being there, and the promotion of tourism there has been quite heavy. All the events and concerts, and they're really pushing international
the
tourism.
moment you go with with the camera, things changes.
Right.
If you are going as a tourist, which is very easy, you
It
get
is
a
pretty,
visa
yeah.
within minutes. um,
Yes.
when you want to go there to film, um, is a huge amount of red tape you have to cross. I mean, they were really nice and cooperative, and the rest of the region, just getting a drone permit is a nightmare on his own right. It takes months. Anyhow, we got through all of that, but these are the boring parts. But little by little, we found. So we wanted 6 stories. The one story was in Iraqi Kurdistan, which was the Persian leopard, which was a big mystery. How do we find this endangered, nearly extinct species? 2, an unexplored canyon in Saudi Arabia. No one has ever been inside that canyon. the potential of people living in a canyon, in a cave in Oman, in a sort of impenetrable canyon system. It was a converging canyon system, which no one could believe that actually human could live there. Through the satellite imagery, we found the potential existence of human there. So that was another mystery. Another one was we found Oman is one of the driest places in the world, and we found a tribe actually that live without any source of water. So we wanted to know
Oh,
how do they do it, um, and so on and so forth. So these were like a mysteries that we built, and we found no one has ever filmed the dugongs in Persian Gulfs, and we were the first camera crew that we actually managed to capture them on camera because they're a very specific breed of dugongs. So yeah, all in all, this was the summary of the different subjects that we hit.
what is a dugong?
Sea cows. It's
Sea
a very
cow.
yeah, very vegetarian, gentle vegetarian mammal. We spend about a month at sea till we're able to sort of catch them on camera. Anywhere in the world, you can film dugongs. You can go very close to them. In the Persian Gulf, these breeds, no one knows anything about them because they're very skittish. They as soon as you get close to them, they escape.
Hmm. Very interesting. That's cool. So you need patience, essentially, and
A lot
time.
of trick, a lot of patience, a lot of using different. We use shipwreck as a cover. So many different tricks to finally we manage to get a glimpse of them.
Fascinating. So that's obviously one of the episodes on that series. So people
That's right. Yeah.
can find out how you did it and
Yeah.
uh,
Exactly.
everything on that episode.
Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. I love that. The inquisitive mind, in 2023 now is so important. These things to keep thinking about and get off of Instagram. I'm telling myself that as well, and go out and investigate and learn something and inquire. And yeah, it's so fun. Super
I
fun.
mean, our
And
planet is full of
sharing.
incredible mysteries, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it's such a privileged position to be in to be able to tell those stories. And yeah, I absolutely love it.
It's fantastic. I wanted to also ask you because you've done so many trips by bike. It looks like, various types of bikes from road bikes to fat bikes recently. Which bikes have you done on different journeys? And do you have a favorite bike?
Yeah, I have to say, fat bikes definitely not my favorite. So I use a fat bike to cross the desert in Saudi Arabia, and it was a pain in the ass. It was so hard. It was so heavy. Obviously, we have to deflate the tires to be able to get a bit more friction.
Yeah.
It was so hard on legs and bodies. It was really taxing. Um, and you push really hard and you progress not much. But there was the only way to cross the sand dunes and deserts and that sort of thing. So there's no other way to cross it. For many years, I used mountain bikings. I never used mountain bike for travel, but just mountain bike for in the mountains, which is if you look at it as a sort of a sport, I absolutely love it. But in terms of traveling, I never forget the times that I had with my expedition bike. For many years, I've been sponsored by a brand called Koga, which is a Dutch brand, and they make the best travel bikes ever. So I normally travel with fully laden bikes. Two panniers in the front, two panniers in the back, with a dry bag, strapped around the back of the bike. I carry normally like 35 kilos on the bike with everything that I need, so I can go really far. Um, I can camp where I need to. I'm quite self sufficient. Um, I really miss that, and I think that was my one of my best memories. It was, to travel and think, okay, I've done my daily quota today, and let's just start a fire, get the stove going, cook whatever I need to cook, and yeah, enjoy a bit moment of like silence and peace.
Yeah, those trips seem to be on a tight timeline. So did you have a specific amount of kilometers that you had to do per day, or miles that you had to do per day?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about my sort of record-breaking journeys and stuff like that. But other than that, I've done a fair amount of journeys, around Europe. I've done a fair amount of journeys in Nepal, India, that sort of places. Fair amount of bike touring,
Mhm.
and when I'm looking back, uh, those memories are the best because no time pressure, and you're actually enjoying what you're doing without actually competing against the clock. um,
Mhm.
and you once you're traveling with the speed of bikes, it's fascinating because you look at things in a different way. You kind of it gives you the perspective of how the world sort of being pulled together. You really feel the country and the culture. Your requirements are quite basic. So you need place to sleep. Your life is quite simple. You need water to drink, and that immediacy, that sort of a simpleness, immediately, you know, makes you think about your most basic needs. And what we are sharing with people from different culture, at least that's a good starting point. You arrive in a village with your bike, you're absolutely hungry. There's someone's there to feed you, and that's a really good start of a conversation. You ask for someone that can I camp in your garden, and that's all of a sudden the people don't look at the bikers as threats.
Right, right. Yeah, I was going to ask you because in this most recent series, you were traveling a little bit more in Land Cruisers
Yeah.
and a little bit on the fat bike. So, how did your experience of the journey change because you were in a vehicle versus on a bike?
So it was every episode was sort of a standalone. So
Hmm.
there were places that the only reason actually we used bike in one of the episodes was we wanted to sort of cover this vast expanse of desert, and as part of the sort of a Saudi Arabia's policy, there's no car allowed other than electric cars. There's no car is allowed in that sort of a particular development part of Saudi Arabia, which is called NEOM. Um,
Yeah, Neom,
although
yeah.
there are construction vehicles and that kind of stuff there, but as a film crew, we were not allowed to use any sort of a petrol vehicle. On that basis, we thought, okay, what are we going to do? We're gonna use bike, which we can do really well, and we're going to cover this incredible place with our bikes. So that was a standalone sort of a bike episode, but the other episodes, we have to go to a particular place, going from arriving in capital, going to a very very remote place, getting inside the canyon, rappel or abseil inside the canyon, or explore a cave. So with that, we had to use Land Cruiser, which is the default um, vehicle for sort of a Middle East and that part of the world. The white Land Cruiser, that's what you see over there. I really like it actually. In
Yeah.
fact, when we wanted to go to one of the caves, because we didn't have any anchor point, we used the car as our anchor point. So yeah, we wrapped the ropes around the car and used the car as an anchor when we were descending into a sinkhole.
Nice. That's great. Yeah, I've heard just the difference between traveling like on a motorcycle and an enclosed four-wheel drive vehicle versus a bicycle. It's all obviously a very different experience, and you're exposed to the elements a lot more and talking to a lot more people when your face is out of the windows and all of
Yeah,
that.
you're absolutely right. I think just to echoing what you mentioned, when you arrive in a village or a town, if you go with a like on a swanky Land Cruiser, and people look at you, oh, this rich guy has come here, he's got an agenda, he wants to film, he wants to, I don't know, he's got so much money to spend or whatever. You're received in a different way. Whereas when you travel with a bike, especially in developing countries, when you arrive in a village, people look at you and think, oh, this poor guy can't afford the car. He's coming with a bicycle, so we might as well feed this guy and look after poor bastard. So that's how they sort of receive you, and all of a sudden they don't look at you they don't look at you as a threat. They look at you as in a different way, which I quite like. They're very
Yeah,
curious. Yeah.
I love that. I think we also, as travelers or expedition leaders or participants, are sometimes like, oh, I wonder, about my own safety in certain places, but we don't necessarily think about, oh, well, what if they are worried about us as a safety concern as well? Like it totally goes both ways.
That's a really, really valid point. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. So good things to think about.
Yeah.
Awesome. I wanted to bridge the gap between your trips and your daily life because I think you have a lot to share and a lot of advice to give or tips and tricks on various aspects of life that people can bring into their everyday to make planning or life or challenges a little bit easier to overcome. Um, so, yeah, how do you use the lessons of travel in your everyday life? So, it could be overcoming self doubt, it could be overcoming conflict, making confident decisions, things like that.
Um, I mean, if I can list all of that for you, but that's not a sincere answer. I'm actually a one that really struggles with normal life, and that's a very honest, heartfelt answer because uh, I spent the last 14 years of my life traveling nonstop. Um, I was away from the UK on filming trips about 4 to 5 months a year. I was constantly on the road, coming from Papua New Guinea, packed my bag. 3 days later, I was in the Arctic or going to the Amazon or the Andes or so far and so on and so forth. But um, I really struggled with mundane, and
Yeah,
obviously I established that I cannot be on the road as much as I want to, especially I'm running a small company. I have a little one now, um, and that mundane grind. I mean, as much as I enjoy my little one, I love my family, but it's hard. It's a real struggle. So as um, to make that a little bit easier, I do a lot of rock climbing. Try to release some adrenaline in sort of that side, and I'm lucky that I get to travel quite a lot, but not as much as I want to.
right.
Still, I have that hunger and passion for seeing those places, and I um I'm not sure if you know Sir Richard Burton. He was my inspirational hero. I mean, I know I read all his books, and I absolutely adore this man. And his famous quote said, of the gladdest moments in human life is a departure up in a distant journey into the unknown lands. And this quote stayed with me always. And the moment that I sit on that plane, that's sort of the happiest moment of my life. That's a um, I can't say it's the happiest moment of my life, but one of the happiest moments of my life. I'm just love that butterflies in my belly, traveling. But yeah,
Absolutely.
to answer your question, yeah, all resilience and all that kind of stuff is in there, but at the same time, there's a struggle that I want to be honest and share with your audience.
Absolutely. And I
We
think,
all, as a travelers, we all struggling with normal lives. I'm pretty sure whoever listened to you, to your podcast, when they come back to normal life, they are struggling with the mundane and normality of life.
yeah, it's definitely a yin and yang situation, I think. And do you ever feel like you get oversaturated? Have you ever been like, I probably need just a sec to go home and just really like think and reflect on what I've seen and what I've learned and what I've absorbed. I'm a little overwhelmed and I just want to like let it sink in a little bit? Or do you find that with the time periods that you're gone, that doesn't really happen?
No, it does. I mean, when I was, I could do sort of a long journeys, like being on the road for like 4 months, 3 months. Towards the end of it, you're really tired of traveling, and you really appreciate being stationary in one place. But
Yeah.
this doesn't happen these days because most of my trip is because of work, and work is a very sort of a blur line between work and travel. So I travel for to sort of all these incredible places for work, and the work is very scheduled. So when you go there, you have to meet this and that and that, and you have to film this and that. um, it's quite a sort of a regimented, full-on schedule. So 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, you have to come back home. So that doesn't happen as much these days.
Gotcha. What is your role? So you're in front of the camera, obviously you're hosting and you're researching. Are you directing as well? Like what are your other roles that you're
So I'm a
undertaking?
producer. So about 60% of the time I produce, um, and direct, and I can shoot as well. But you know, uh, I by default I produce like 90, 60% of the time, and 40% of the time, if the networks really want me to be in front of a camera, I wouldn't say no, because
Right.
it's cool.
Yeah, you like it.
I like it. You know, call it my life. My wife say all the presenters are attention seekers. Call me attention seekers. I can live with that, no problem.
That's so funny. How many people are on your team, or does it depend?
uh we including locals. I mean, that in the last series that we produced, we clocked to we reached the limit of 22. At certain parts we were 6 or 7.
Okay. Yeah.
And in bin expeditions and travel film crews, that we were like 3 or 4.
Right. Okay.
3 has been the minimum.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Nice. Nice.
my
Hmm.
my favorite number is 3. Traveling with a crew of 3, which doesn't happen, is a really good balance. I think 2, you get bored of each other very quickly, but 3 is kind of a good dynamic.
And you all, I'm assuming, kind of share roles. Like you have to be multi-talented, or is
Yeah,
that true?
exactly. All the sort of line blares. The presenter carried tripod. The director rely on a producer. Producer rely on a director. But in sort of a more sophisticated, more sort of a bigger scale shoots, like Man, for example, we had a drone pilot, a sound man, a, a logistic manager, a camp expert, a DIT, which is like guys who are doing all the backups, 2 cameramen, a director, a producer, production manager, loads of people on set. Because
Wow.
there was quite big scale, and loads of people on safety and all of that, because we were doing
Mm.
something really, really risky.
Ooh, cliffhanger. Very cool. What is your favorite piece of kit? Or is there something that you bring on every single trip?
Um, I my Osprey backpack. It's something that I would love to carry. I mean, it's the best piece of backpack I've ever had, and always carried with me. But um, I always carry dry bags. I mean, they're multi-purpose. I absolutely love it. And I can use it as a water container. I can use it as a um storage. I can put my all my dirty clothes in it. Multi purpose.
And lightweight, very lightweight, obviously. So
Very lightweight. I mean, dry
that's all.
bags are quite small. I mean, they come from. I don't have one handy. I'll show it to you, but they come in different sizes. So they're a piece of plastic. Effectively, they're so small and lightweight. So they can do a lot with them.
That's awesome. I love a good dry bag too. Just
Yeah.
protecting against the elements like mud and rain and snow, but then also you can have your stuff inside of it. I love your idea about transporting water. as well.
You can basically you can put all the underwear, socks, and everything into one, and then your tops into one, all your sort of bottoms into another, accessories into one. So your bag is very tidy. So it's very easy to access everything, and one for your sort of a wet clothes. So
Yeah, I love a good organized bag, especially for hiking. So good.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, another question for you. This is one that we ask quite frequently on this podcast is what is your favorite book?
Sorry, say that again.
Oh,
Favorite book.
yeah.
First Footstep in East Africa by Richard Barton.
Richard Burton. I thought it
Yeah.
probably would be him. Nice. What is it
Yeah.
about that book that makes it your favorite?
I mean, the rawness of the travel those days. I mean, it's when he traveled and um, to the wilderness of East Africa. With bare minimum, he was a linguist, so he could speak so many languages, but he couldn't those days couldn't speak any African languages. He went and found a lake in. He was funded by Royal Geographical Society in the UK, and nowadays, doing that trip is not a big deal, but those days, like first footstep of white man going to this sort of African wilderness in search of a particular lake without any particular map or much knowledge, with all those diseases, malaria. How do you navigate? Those were tough men. Um, but he was an incredible individual.
Awesome. I was going to ask you, I have a book that I just read by Barbara Toy. I don't know if you've heard of her. And the listeners on the podcast are probably going to get tired of me talking about her, but she drove her Land Rover all over the world in the 50s and 60s, 70s. And she went to Mount Weni. I believe that is in Ethiopia. I don't know if you've heard of it. But
Sorry,
there used to
Mount
be Weni
Gwenny.
with a W. Mount Weni in Ethiopia.
Mm,
But apparently, heirs to the imperial throne were imprisoned, often for life at the top. And there's this
wow.
section of the book where, and I don't want to give it away just in case people read it, but there's a helicopter involved, and she goes from the helicopter onto this top of this mountain, like some Lara Croft situation. So I just love it. It's kind of like she was the first person in a really, 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 really long time to be at the top because it wasn't accessible by just hiking up. And so I think
Wow.
there's a lot of nostalgia and a lot of respect that I have for explorers of the past and these historical trips
Yeah.
that are just I just love reading about the history of travel and expeditions, and it's all so interesting and inspiring.
It was quite different those days, wasn't it? It was about effectively going to new places. These days, it's quite different. It's not about just going to new places. Is what's your take on those places that you travel?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a really wise thing to say. Yeah. What's your take on it? Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much,
Of
Reza, for
course.
coming on the Overland Journal podcast. This has been so fascinating. I wanted to just wrap it up by asking you if there's anything in the works that we should keep an eye out for, any projects on the way that you can actually speak about.
At the moment, so basically, um, I was told by Discovery Channel that the second season of Hidden Frontiers has been sort of commissioned. So, um,
Oh, yay, congrats.
thank you. So we're looking into sort of a couple of different regions. That's what I cannot disclose to whether it's going to be in Asia or the US. Likely to be the US. The second season, we are looking into it at the moment. And yeah, hopefully I should be able to share more soon. And really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for being here and taking the time. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing where you go next and what you discover and uncover. And if anybody wants to find you online, or watch any of the series, where can they find you?
Sure. So my series on a catch up TV on Discovery at the moment. So Discovery Go, they can go and see them. In the UK, I've got a couple of series on Amazon Prime. In Europe, I have one series on Netflix, which is called Cap to Cave. If you are in Spain, you can watch it if you're there. Um, and yeah, these are for streamers. And Hidden Frontiers is just about to hit various screens around the world. So the broadcast in the US has finished. So now it's doing its sort of a world tour, if you like.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And then you've got your book, Cap to Cape. And
Yes.
are there any social media platforms or
Yeah,
anywhere?
my website is rezapakravan.com. Social medias are all Reza Pakravan.
Fantastic.
I'm in a bit of an Instagram break at the moment, so I haven't posted for a while.
Love it.
I'm doing a bit of a social media cleansing, if you like.
Fantastic stuff. Awesome.
All
Well,
right,
thanks
wonderful.
again. It's
Thank you,
been a
Ashley.
thank you. And
Of
thank you
course.
to the Overland Journal podcast listeners for tuning into another episode. And we will see you next time. Thanks.